How long did it take you to get over that, if you ever did?
Um, I don't think I ever did. And the reason I say that is because uh, when I was a teenager, I went through a lot of anxiety and depression, and I kind of carried that into college with me. And I came to school in Sioux Falls, and so um, that was about, at that time, driving 55 or 60 on the interstate. That was about 8 hours away from where I grew up. And so, I was away from home for the first time. And I think it hit me harder when I was at college. I started having some anxiety attacks, which, if you've ever had them, they're just the scariest thing. You just don't know, what's happening. I would hyperventilate and things like that. And that kind of carried, I had my children and was able to raise them, but I do remember a couple of times where I would get those panic attacks every once in a while. So I don't know that I ever really dealt with it. And the reason that I think that is not only because of those, but also because um, a few years ago I talked to a counselor. It was a counselor I'd seen before, and she came out and asked me the question. She said, "Have you ever really grieved your dad, the loss of your dad?" And it was just like the tears just poured. And it was like, we talked about him a lot. And it wasn't like the subject of him was taboo or anything. I mean, but it wasn't something that was um, really talked about in depth. We would talk about memories and things like that as we grew up and as we got older. But, you know, at the beginning, when your grief is the deepest, I found that we didn't try to talk about it because we didn't want to make it worse for our mother and for each other as well. And so I think a lot of times we tried to kind of put it aside when we were together. Um, I really credit my twin brothers for kind of keeping the whole um, of his memory alive, because they remember, even at the age of 6, they remembered the most minute details of things that my sister and I would always laugh and say, "Oh, you guys made that up." And they're, "No, no," and
Hmm.
they would
Hmm.
argue back and forth. "Yeah, we remember," and I really do think that their memories were just so sharp that at that age, and they had the benefit of um, kind of working off each other to fill in the little details of everything. And so,
Some twins are like that. They're very
oh
close,
yeah,
and
they're
that'll.
identical,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
tell.
When I will do funerals, I'll say, well, a funeral is a day of grief, and we're eventually translating to memory. So you don't want to remember the day that somebody died. You want to remember the life that they lived. But in the haste, in the pressures of life, sometimes you just got to jump over that grief or feel like you need to and just go right to the memory. And how interesting that that question off the cuff years later made you go, wait, you know what? Maybe I should just cry right now. Tears are
Yeah,
interesting. They have just like if you get a cut and it bleeds to heal the wound, so tears can heal the wound of a soul.
that's right.
Was writing this book also kind of healing?